Hello, kiddies. This is the Crypt Keeper, and you're listening to Uncle Josh's True Scary Stories. Be careful what you ask for. You may get it.
Hey, campfire crew. Let's get it on. She Wouldn't Go Away, submitted by Derek. So this started when I was in high school, but spanned over the following 7 years. I was a band geek in high school. I played football and baseball too, but I was really into trumpet and jazz. Still am, have my own band too. There was this girl, I'll call her Jamie for this so as to not call her out on what happened. She was cute, but more of a band geek than me. I mean, she was really smart, but that's all she did was play her flute and study. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think we all know there's more to life than just two things. I first noticed her looking at me during band practice one day. My second trumpet and I had a duo for one tune, and my band instructor wanted us to stand up during our performance, so we did that in practice too. Each time we did the solos, I would look down and see Jamie staring up at me. Totally normal. I mean, other people watched us too. But right away, this felt weird. It got to be that she looked at me so often that I finally mentioned it to my girlfriend at the time. I'll call her Chrissy. Chrissy also played the flute, but was a few chairs down from Jamie. Chris laughed at me first, but then one day she gave me a note between classes and it said, "She is looking at you a lot in band." One day, Chris came to my baseball game and so did Jamie. No big deal, right? Wrong. Jamie sat on the bleachers staring at me the whole time I was on the field. I played first base, so she was right there watching me, and any play I made, she would scream and cheer, and finally my girlfriend went over to her and told her that I was taken and to ease up a bit. Jamie sat down and didn't say anything back, and Chris was a softball player and could be intimidating when she wanted to be, and Jamie was a year younger, so there was no outbreak at the game. The staring kept up, and I started getting notes in my locker on a regular basis. It's been a long time, but I remember a lot of them said all this stuff about how my girlfriend was cheating on me and that I should dump her. I showed Chris, and she just laughed and said it was probably Jamie trying to split us up. Our prom came, and this was the night Jamie decided to tell me that she liked me. I can't remember who she went with, but during a break in dancing and stuff, I went to get a soda, and when I turned around, there she was. She asked to talk to me, and I said, go ahead, and she told me that she really liked me and wanted to know me better. Before I could say anything back, Chris came up and took me by the arm and just gave her a death stare. So time moved on. I went to college, and Chris and I tried to do the long-distance thing, but we ended up breaking up. However, my sophomore year, I got a little surprise. I wasn't majoring in music, but I still did play a ton and stored some of my gear in a friend's space in the music hall. Jamie, apparently, was majoring in music, and that's when I bumped into her. She went to the same college as me. It was awkward, but I tried to be nice and chatted with her for a bit, and then went on my way. And here's where things started to go off the rails. That Friday, I was at a house party, and Jamie showed up. She was with her friends, but halfway through the night, she came over to me and hung out, which was fine. But she started trying to get me to leave with her, and it got annoying. No matter where I went at that party, Jamie would find me. And finally, I told my friends I was going to head back to our dorm. I went to the bathroom and then crawled out the window and practically ran back to campus. I went to my room and then decided to take a shower, and when I got back to my room, it was pitch black as I had turned the lights off when I went down the hall. When I opened the door, a light from the hallway came in, but it was still dark when I closed the door. I got a beer out of my roommate's mini fridge and went to my desk to turn on my light. When I did, what did I see? Jamie laying on my bed in just her bra and panties. She was smiling at me, and Now, don't get me wrong, I like sex and chicks like there's no tomorrow, but this chick was just weird. I asked her what she was doing and how she got in, and then remembered I probably forgot to lock the door when I went for my shower. She just smiled and said, "I'm yours. Do what you want." I threw her a sweatshirt and told her that this wasn't a good idea, and she put it aside and pulled me to her. I'm just kidding. Can I sleep here, though? Honestly, some guy followed me home from the party, and I ducked into your dorm because it was closer than mine. Yeah, knowing it was a bad idea, I still let it happen. I figured I'd let her live out her little weird dream and then she'd go away. I sat in a chair despite her saying I could share my bed with her. In the morning when I woke up, she was gone. Then the phone calls started, constantly ringing for an hour at a time, usually in the middle of the night. This was in the 90s, so we had one of those old-style desk phones in our room, and my roommate Tom was getting pissed as the phone was nearest to him. Nobody was ever on the line. The phone would ring, Tom or I would answer it, and they'd hang up. Again, it was annoying, and it had to be Jamie. I started dating a girl, let's call her Kat, and every time Kat would hang out or stay overnight, the phone would ring all night long to the point that I would just have to unplug it. One night we were having sex, and in the middle of it there was a crazy pounding on my door. It startled us, and I didn't answer it, but it kept up until I finally got up and ripped the door open. There was no one there, but I did hear a stairwell door closing down the hall. This happened a lot when Kat and I were messing around. Another night, I woke up to Jamie standing in our room at like 2:30 in the morning, standing over my bed. I yelled. Tom woke up and she ran out of the room. I rarely locked our door, but Tom made me do it after that. He didn't want anyone just showing up anymore. I started getting weird letters again, and it had to be from Jamie. Some were bad poetry, and others were pictures of what I assumed was her naked from the neck or waist down. One time, she sent me a pair of her panties and a note to suck on them to taste how much she wanted me. That was it. I went to my RA, who was super cool about everything, and said he would take care of it, and he did. Jamie was barred from coming into my dorm at any time, and our RD spoke to her RD about her too. Things went quiet. I decided to transfer to another school after that year and moved to New Mexico. My mom had moved out there, and it seemed like a smart move for me too. I grew up in Philly, and that's where I was in school before this, and just FYI. So I graduate 2 years later, and I moved to LA to work in film, which I still do. Suddenly, I started getting weird phone calls again. Lots of hang-ups and messages that said nothing but took up my entire answering machine. Then more letters. This time threatening stuff like, "Don't ignore me, answer the phone," or "You're missing out on the best pussy you'll ever get." Stuff like that. I kept all of them, and after a month of that shit, I went to the police. The problem was, none of the letters were stamped or postmarked. The cops said they were likely hand-delivered, which I found out was a crime to use a mailbox without postage. Yeah, sorry, stupid sidebar there. The police told me to change my phone number if I could, which I did, and to also let my mailman know someone was putting stuff in my mailbox illegally. Again, done and done. The calls stopped, but the letters were now just left on my car windshield. I knew it had to be Jamie again, but how the hell did she know I lived out in LA? The final straw came one night when I was admittedly a little more than tipsy. I took a cab back to my apartment after I was at a party, and I crashed on the couch after drinking a bunch of water. I woke up in the middle of the night to hear my shower running. It took me a minute to get my bearings, and then I realized that someone was in my place. My door was open just a bit, and I started freaking out. So I looked for my cordless phone, but then realized it was in my bedroom, which was next to my bathroom. I crept down the hallway to get it, and planned on calling the cops outside my front door, but I didn't get the chance. As soon as I got the phone and turned to head back to my living room, the bathroom door opened. there was Jamie, naked and soaking wet from the shower. I had to notice she was also holding a knife from my kitchen set. She smiled at me, but I didn't stick around for anything else to happen. I ran out of my apartment and called 911. Jamie followed me, saying to hang up and that she was just there to make me happy and that she'd kill herself if I didn't stop and talk to her. Like I said, I called the cops, and as luck would have it, there was a cruiser in my neighborhood and they came right over. Long story short, I waited outside. They found Jamie in my place, wearing my clothes when they got there, and she told them that I had invited her in and that I had been in love with her since high school. She told them that she was okay to be there, to which I said no fucking way, and then told them my whole story. They took her away, and that's the last I ever saw or heard from her. All I knew was that she moved back to Philly and she lives with her mother. A mutual friend said that she finally got the help that she needed. But how she knew I moved to New Mexico and then LA is still a mystery to me, and how she found out where I lived is even stranger still. I guess now that I look back on it, I don't want to know. Story 2 by Mara. When I was stalked, it was a long, drawn-out, years-over situation. It was my first boyfriend. We dated for maybe a year and change, a horrible relationship. He cheated, but I didn't have the self-esteem at the time to cut him loose. So it went on much longer than it should have. I broke up with him, deleted his number from my phone, and deleted most social media. I made my Facebook page private, but he would message me every day, multiple times a day, and I just wouldn't respond. He lived in the next town over, but I would see him hanging around my town, and I would see him on my way home from school. He wouldn't say anything. He would just walk parallel to me. He would look at me, but it was one of those things where you don't want to engage, but you can tell that you're being followed. So I just tried to put it out of my head, and eventually he stopped following me and the messages also stopped. So I was relieved. A couple of years later, I graduated and went to college. But then when I came back home for my first break, he started popping up again. I saw him on my block maybe once or twice, and as I said, all my social media accounts were private. But as I started to get older and applied for internships and jobs, I ended up making them public for my employers. As soon as I did, boom, he followed me. Not long after, I was up late in my room, and I heard something being thrown at my window. So I look through the window, and I see him standing in my neighbor's driveway. It's one of those things where you're aware of what's happening, but it takes you a little while to really process it. He kept coming back to my window at all hours of the night. It got to the point where I wouldn't go downstairs past a certain hour, after it got dark, because we have a big glass deck door in my kitchen. After 2 or 3 times, I told my mom, and then we called the police. At first, I didn't say anything to my mom because she was never a fan of his. It took me way longer than it should have to break up with him, and it put a strain on our relationship as a family. I didn't want to worry her or further damage our relationship as a mother and daughter by admitting what was happening to me. I was scared, but I was also scared of, I told you so. The police came and swept the area, but they didn't find anyone. They asked if he had made physical contact or threats, and because he hadn't, they said there was nothing they could do. Not long after, my mom kept telling me that the car smelled funny. It didn't stink, it just smelled different. We shared the car, so we were both pretty familiar with how it smelled inside. And then, one morning, she opened the car door, and he was sleeping in the passenger seat. We put it together that he had been sleeping in my mom's car for weeks, but I guess this one particular morning he didn't wake up in time before she left, so she caught him. She didn't even know what to say because she hadn't seen him in 3 years, and this is someone her daughter dated as a teenager, and by now I was 21. We didn't call the police. We didn't think there was anything they could do. He never made a single physical threat to us, but that doesn't mean it's not stalking. Anyway, he just got up and left, and sometime later I received a letter from him, from jail. He detailed how much I meant to him. My mom advised me to not say anything. Now, I haven't heard from him in years, thankfully. Truly, though, the aftermath has been a lot worse. A lot of me is still trying to decide if I was being irrational, even though I felt unsafe. I struggled with whether I was overreacting a lot. I get that the police can't just file restraining orders against every single person for breathing the wrong way, but it seems like there should be an in-between before it gets to actual physical contact. I remember I joked with my friend one time and said, "Hey, if I end up on a milk carton, you know who did it." And then I thought about it, and it's one of those jokes that deep down you do believe. You laugh to make light of a situation in which you feel powerless and scared, because it's all you can do. It's like a half-truth. You're actually halfway afraid that something bad is going to happen. This is happening right now, by Too Crazy for Me. I've been trying to decide whether to post something about this and where. None of the home security subs really fit or have posts like this. I think I just need some objective feedback on how to deal with this. Using my throwaway account because I don't want people to know the layout of my house. So my partner and I just moved to a desert community in the American Southwest. I've always wanted to live down here, and so far I absolutely love it. I love the quiet, living on the outskirts of town with desert to the horizon in my backyard, how friendly people are, the stars at night, the wildlife, the space. I'm not bothered by the occasional snake or scorpion or coyote in my yard, but I've recently been getting the feeling that there have been other creatures in my yard as well. Even if I'm not imagining it, I don't know if this is worth doing something about, or what I can do. I'll explain. My partner got a lucrative job offer from a hospital here, where he covers the night shift for his specialty at most of the local hospitals in 3 states. Small hospitals in remote areas often offer nice incentives to bring people in from large cities, and since we were looking to move here anyway, we decided to take the position for a couple of years and see if I could find a job in my field here in the meantime. At the moment, I'm working remotely, and I stay on the night shift to be able to see my fiancée more. We get up around 2 or 3 p.m., he goes to work early enough for me to run around and do any shopping or chores in the afternoon, and he gets back from work around 5 a.m., and we head to bed around 7. It's an intense schedule, but he has every other week off. This is important later. So after 5 p.m., I'm home alone all day at the duplex that we rent from an elderly couple down the block. We used to have a medical resident living on the other side, but she would never talk to us, and she just moved out. Apparently she tore the place apart, so there are contractors working on the other side during the day most days. So I sit at the kitchen table and work during the night, occasionally going out to walk our old dog, get the mail, or to water the plants in the courtyard. The entire house is visible from the courtyard because there are windows and glass doors leading to basically every room from there. I'm going to detail the incidents as they've occurred, with minimal editorializing. 1. 4 weeks ago, I went back to sleep after my partner left for work. About an hour later at one point, I woke up and realized that my dog had been barking for an unusually long time and doing his danger bark. The lawn guys and delivery folks come into our courtyard and we just moved in, so I figure it's something like that. Still, he knows the delivery guys and neighbors by now, and they usually leave pretty quickly. He must have been barking for 2 or more minutes by now. I sat up in bed and looked out into the courtyard, and there's a man I don't recognize, and he's acting weird. He kind of looks like Willem Dafoe. He's near the front door trying to look into the windows around the side, and looking into windows progressively further from the door. Without thinking, I called out, "I'll be right there," thinking that he needed a signature or something. The guy steps back quickly, turns around and speed walks out of the courtyard. As he does so, he gives me this extremely malevolent stare. I've never quite seen anything like it before. It startled me because he looked right at me, dead in the eye through the window, and just looked disgusted and hateful. But during the day, you can't see through the blinds from the outside. I've checked. How did he know where I was? I admit, this event freaked me out, and may have laid the groundwork for my impressions of the potentially perfectly normal events outlined below. I flash back to this moment regularly for some reason. 2. 3 weeks ago, strange stuff starts to happen. My partner offers to work some extra shifts on what would normally be his week off, so I'm often home alone. A few times I hear what I think must be one of my elderly neighbors around the side of the house, but when I go over there, there's no one there. I start to hear someone walking around the outside of the house at night. The area is surrounded by gravel, so unless someone steps slowly, you can hear things moving around. When I was laying in bed working on things a few times, I became acutely aware of noise just outside the bedroom window, late at night. I started checking the area with the flashlight when I went outside. I heard bipedal footsteps on the roof multiple times during the periods when the neighbors confirmed that no contractors were supposed to be up there, and it was often at night. The feeling of being watched a lot at night began, and I started leaving the outdoor lights on all night while I was there, especially in the courtyard. I don't take showers alone because I sometimes hear footsteps on the roof when I'm in there, and there's a skylight over the shower. I researched, bought, and installed a security system and a couple of cameras in the courtyard. 3. 2 weeks ago. And this is when things get more serious. I pull into my parking space and see one of the elderly neighbors peering into my bedroom window in the afternoon. I greet him, and he says he's going around the side of the house to activate the sprinkler system that happens to have the hub on our property. Unclear if this is related. I put up opaque clings in the windows of the bedroom to block some of the light while we're sleeping during the day. As soon as I do, I stop feeling watched from the bedroom window, but begin to feel uncomfortable that my view of the courtyard is obscured. I do feel better for 2 days. The next night, I start feeling watched from the living room windows while I'm working, and eventually from the kitchen window especially. That night I have a small panic attack and spend a lot of time in bed under the covers with my dog in the room with me. I don't know the source of my discomfort and keep telling myself I'm being paranoid and chalk it up to reading some creepy stuff I read the week before. I have to cancel an event because I'm up all day unable to sleep due to extreme anxiety. I talk at length with my partner about getting more cameras, but we don't have the money, and I'm still in denial about the reasons for my discomfort, so I drop it. Stuff in the courtyard is sometimes moved around, then I watch the camera to figure out the neighbor woman did it. Beer cans and some other stuff is found on the property that isn't ours, but I think it's the wind. Things related to our cars and garbage cans start being messed with, but you can see around for miles, and there aren't really many that people here. I hear tapping on a window and ignore it. 4. Last week. We were traveling for part of the week. When we got back, we were in good spirits. My partner went right back to work, and my nights became predictable. Feeling good and doing things until a few hours after it gets dark. I suddenly feel shitty, not wanting to do things that put me near the windows, deciding to curl up in bed with my dog in my room and refuse to move until my partner gets home. This has happened every night this past week. Finally, I noticed my dogs kept staring at the kitchen window with both ears facing towards it, ignoring commands or questions for long periods of time. My very curious cat repeatedly kept trying to see something outside of it as well during the night. This finally jogged me back to reality, and I realized that I feel this oppressive sensation of being watched every night starting around 10 p.m. and continuing until dawn. It's mostly from the kitchen window, but honestly, the whole house freaks me out now. There isn't really anywhere to run that doesn't have windows except the garage or the bathroom. I take my phone and a knife with me everywhere I go. I constantly check the courtyard because every room has a door leading to it. Tonight, I took my dog out and heard someone walking towards us from the side of the house. And I called out, shone the flashlight over there, but it stopped, and I saw nothing. Normally, I would have gone to investigate, but I had the strongest feeling that I shouldn't. The same thing happened in another location later in the evening. When I took the dog out yesterday around midnight, someone was coming across the field I take him to with a flashlight, and when they got near me, they shut the flashlight off and I didn't see them after that, and they didn't respond to my calling out. I'm a mid-30s female who is not easily spooked. I've worked in law enforcement and SAR, and I feel confident in my ability to defend myself. The landlady was very insistent that we not change the locks. She said that a cleaning person who stole some of their things had a key to the lower one, so to not use that one and just to use the deadbolt, for which supposedly only she and I have keys. I feel like I'm in a slow-motion horror movie, but during the day and partners' weeks off, everything is usually fine, so I don't know what to think. I don't know why I think that. My partner wants me to get my concealed carry and another younger dog. And this isn't known to be an unsafe area at all, but the properties are spaced pretty well. I can't tell whether any of this is real or not. I don't have any close friends here, and I'm planning to buy a camera and motion lights for the back when I have money next week. But, and I know this sounds crazy, I don't know if that's a good idea. I think, whoever it is, once I've seen them, they're going to escalate this. This is my Stalker story, by Ringo B82. My freshman year of college was one of the funnest years of my life, and some of my fondest memories are from that year. But it was also the scariest and strangest year to date. This is thanks to one story in particular. There are actually a couple more that I might post some other time, and this took place over the entire school year. I still sometimes wonder how this really happened, and I didn't end up a shut-in nutjob. It still freaks me out to this day. August 2001. Like most freshmen, I lived in the dorms at a state party school. I opted out of the good school I got into, and I guess I had a little steam to blow off after graduating from a military college prep boarding school. Plus, after a sports injury, I didn't exactly have any specific plan for life that went past Saturday night, if you know what I mean. A good buddy from military school, Bill, went to the same college and lived a few floors below me in the same dorm. So of course, we were getting the party started before my parents' exhaust fumes had even evaporated from the parking lot. For the most part, the first month or so of college was pretty much like that. Normal. I went to most of my classes, partied just about every night, chased girls around, and that was enough for the moment. But things began to change one night, sometime in mid-September, and college for me would never be normal again. My dorm phone, a landline, only Zach Morris carried a cell phone in 2001, get over it. It rang in the middle of the night. Hello? On the other end, I could only really describe the voice as the kind you picture when you think about a computer talking. Kind of like the early model car GPSs.
Hi, Gary. How are you today?
Not fully awake, I was just confused at that point. Who is this? He repeated.
Hi, Gary. How are you today?
It became clear I'm being fucked with, so I hung up and chuckled. Fucking Bill, nice one. And I passed back out. I ended up forgetting about the call for a few days and never mentioned it to Bill or anyone else. About a week later, I get another call around the same time of night.
Hi, Gary. I'm watching you.
Nice. Very cliche. Seriously, Bill, how are you not knee-deep in Everclear or a Tri-Delt at this hour? Enough already. Cade, my roommate, is starting to get pissed. And then I hung up. I casually confronted my oh-so-clever amigo at breakfast the next morning, purposely not trying to bite too hard to give him a payoff that might have incentivized to continue the calls. I also wasn't 100% it was actually him and not another one of my douchebag friends. He gave a genuinely confused response. Whatever. So a couple days after the second call, I came home and saw I had multiple messages on my answering machine. What the fuck? I barely knew the thing even worked. It's computer-voiced guy again, and I'll call him CVG from here on out. Message 1. My machine cuts off the first 1 or 2 seconds of the message, which tells me it's a bot set to play message upon answer.
Hello, no one is available to take your call. Please leave a message after the tone.
Hi, Gary. I'm watching you.
Message 2.
I thought I asked you to answer my calls, Gary.
Message 3.
Where might Gary be on a Tuesday night?
Okay, so one of my friends is clearly an asshole, or bored enough to really push for a reaction here. The next day, I play the messages for Cade, who was around during the calls, which were apparently earlier in the night when he was still awake. He'd been a close buddy since we were in junior high, but we'd sort of taken separate paths after high school. So anyway, he's aware I'm a wild child and thinks nothing of the first couple of messages. By the third, he's a little spooked. I then walk down to a couple of other buddies' rooms and casually but immediately bring up the subject. Nada. Over the next couple of days, I pressed all close and semi-close friends, but got 0 answers and 0 suspects. The calls started coming more frequently over the next couple months, starting at once a week, then to once every 2 or 3 days, up to every day by Christmas break. I don't say anything to my family at that point, although I really should have. What started out as a decent beginning of college turned into not showing up for any classes, tests, or anything. Grades reflected, and I'm too busy answering for a .67 GPA to talk about some dumb prank that would likely be dismissed as a pathetic attempt at grades explanation. So it goes. I had an uneventful break and went back to school determined to become a new man. I gotta get my shit together with these grades, so I tell Bill I'm gonna have to chill out and focus on school. First night back, I get my first spring semester call from CVG.
How is your family in Cyprus?
That's my hometown. Okay, now this is fucking bullshit, man. What kind of douche lords am I hanging out with that even have the discipline to drag out a prank this long? I get the answer to that question a few days later, and the answer is none of them. Calls become threatening and downright dark.
I'm very interested, Gary, in being close to you.
Yeah, with that kind of weird sentence structure like that.
I have tools I can bring. It is going to be all over soon.
One day, I bring Bill and all my other buddies up to hear the messages. I never deleted a single one for some reason. I guess when things happen over longer periods of time, you don't really feel the cumulative impact until laying out the complete package of evidence. The guys were in shock. I guess I should mention that some of these calls got really specific in making sure to note specific details about my parents' address, as well as the violence they were planning on doing to me.
Cut open your esophagus, Gary, with a butter knife.
And all sorts of other crap that is sort of blurred together through the hundreds upon hundreds of calls I got over the school year. A chick friend of mine that I really liked in high school named Layla went to a different school hundreds of miles away. We've reconnected thanks to good old AIM, and talked from time to time on the phone. CVG had mentioned a couple of times your friend, and made threats about this unspecified person from time to time, but your friend turned into your friend Layla. Layla and I are the only 2 people ever named in these calls, but it did get me wondering if this was a new lead to this source. Layla is clueless when I called her about it. Awesome. I know that background was long to read, but you'll understand why I had to explain the situation when I tell you about what happens next. One night, we're all partying and drinking at some hotel. Forgot to mention all that straight A crap went out the window as these events progressed. A different buddy, Carl, has a nice big truck we'd all go everywhere in, but he passed out drunk at the hotel after pounding an entire bottle of whatever the fuck. I'm not really drinking tonight, and want to get back to my own bed. I snatch Carl's keys to drive back to campus, thinking I'll drive back in the morning to get everyone. This was one of the few times I'd ever driven that year, so I wasn't tip-top on my directions. I made an early turn and somehow was down a road I'd never seen. I realized this pretty quick, but I figure I've got the general direction of campus pegged, so I can just continue the wrong road until hitting the familiar highway that I knew I'd eventually have to hit that was close to campus. I'm finding myself in open fields, still a paved road and everything, but aside from the road there was absolutely nothing, and it was completely black. Around 3 a.m., and there's this really strange four-way stop I come upon. Strange because I'm probably the fourth person in a year to drive on that road. Anyway, I trudge along, eventually getting to the familiar highway and home free. A few days later, CVG interrupts his usual depraved threatening to mention that specific four-way, day, and time I was on it, which, like I said, was around 3 a.m., and there wasn't a soul in sight. So, yeah, I now realize CVG is obviously tracking my movement somehow. Note, I later joined the military, worked in the intelligence community, and worked special operations and tracked bad guys all around the world. To this day, I still can't figure out how this dude knew I was in the middle of those fields on that date in the middle of the night. I never mentioned it to anyone. Around March, this apparent rendezvous became CVG's focal point, and he'd made sure to let me know the day was close. The calls were coming in no fewer than 10 or 15 every single day. Seriously. The ringer was now off out of courtesy to Cade, and I turned down the volume of the answering machine as his phone calls recorded. But I finally get the message I had been waiting for. Keep in mind, I have now become somewhat famous or infamous at this university because of CVG. People were constantly knocking on my door wanting to hear the messages. Friend of whomever, I know. It was all people wanted to hear about at parties. Blah, blah, blah. For a split second, it was cool because I'm pretty sure I ended up getting a few dates indirectly from introductions conceived through interest in the guy with the stalker. Hey, don't judge me. Moving right along, day, time, location are set.
We will meet in front of Coleman Hall at midnight Wednesday, 27 April. And we will take our friendship to the next level.
I know what you're thinking, and yeah, throughout the year I had considered the possibility that I was dealing with a female. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, and I was definitely that kind of dude when I was 18 or 19 years old. The kind that could attract clinginess and anger. But I started to rule out females for various reasons that only a fellow ENFJ would understand. And look it up if you're not tracking. I can build profiles with a very high ratio of accuracy to available information. This creep just didn't feel like a female to me. It didn't even feel like a peer. I was convinced I was dealing with mid-30s white male computer nerd that I'd come into contact with at some point in my life. Doesn't really matter, because what I ended up finding out on the 27th of April, which was a Wednesday and also Layla's birthday, I was wrong. Of course, everyone wants to be part of this juicy story, and there's a pretty ridiculous amount of testosterone floating around the dorm on game day. This was a real-life creepster and a legit horror story unfolding before their very eyes, and groupthink will subvert caution if properly motivated. These guys are ready to defend me with their lives. Just ask them. So while these monkeys are getting all hopped up on Mountain Dew, I stayed home that afternoon wondering what the fuck I was going to do at midnight. Of course I was going to go, but... Dude, yeah, I've been an athlete in good shape and wrestling, football, and baseball teams, yada yada yada. But I'm still a 19-year-old white male, good parents, grew up in upper white middle class, suburbia, had a good life. In other words, I can definitely hold my own in a street fight, but this, whatever this is, doesn't feel like anything like a street fight, or any other kind of fight I'd ever been in. This is a disturbed, violent, angry, and possibly grown-ass psychopath that has decided to dedicate almost a full year now of his life to targeting and terrorizing me. So yeah, I was a little friggin' nervous. My home team crowd steadily built up throughout the afternoon and evening, with probably close to 70 or 80 guys grouped up at our dorm's common area. We were connected to the female dorm at the first floor. They were smoking cigarettes and talking about beating the shit out of people and getting fucked up and all the other generic cliche shit you can imagine. Once the party hour approaches, though, over half the guys splinter off into other various propositions that probably included more traditional fun, like beer bongs and sorority girls. I was left with about 15 or 20 guys. I decided earlier that I was not going to allow all these knuckleheads to shadow me, but I could definitely use them in case of emergency. I didn't want to risk this guy spooking out of the meet, so I let them all know they would need to stay inside the doors of the common area while I walked out to the meeting spot. Coleman Hall was adjacent to our connected girls' dorm, and about 300 paces outside door to get to Coleman. The hour came, so I left the crew to begin the longest couple hundred or so paces of my life. My boys can see me through the glass doors, but wouldn't really be able to see much once I got to the Coleman Hall door. About 100 paces out from my spot, I observed two things at the same time. One, some kind of small, quick movement in front of the patio walkway that goes all the way around the building. And two, the movement was in a spot along the walkway, where the only normally uber-bright bulb was out. I'm not exactly sure how I was able to see him, but I suddenly realized someone was crouched behind one of the continuous cookie-cutter bushes outside the patio perimeter against one of the building pillars. In dark clothes and hoodie, he was a few feet off from the path where I was supposed to meet him, and positioned to where I really should not have been able to see him, given the pillar blocking any shadows plus the burnt out, which I later found out was smashed, light. In fact, I could have easily walked all the way to the door without ever having noticed someone down there. Nope. I sort of jump mid-steps as this happens, and I see him raise up a little thinking I might have seen him. I saw him raise up and take a step towards me, and fight or flight hit. I've learned that my particular flight or fight chooses fight in more mild situations, flight during intense situations, but for shit-your-pants situations, it's scarier to run away with your back to whatever scary shit I was dealing with. So I decided to fight. Before I realized what I was doing, I was in a dead sprint towards this motherfucker who I'm guessing sees what I can't yet, which is my platoon busting through the glass doors in hot pursuit. Creepster nopes the fuck out of there, running onto the patio alongside Coleman Hall towards the parking lot. I can tell this isn't a mid-30s computer nerd I predicted. Creepster is above average height, above average broad, and built athletically. That's all I could tell, really. I'm not even sure if he was white because he was at least tan, if not Hispanic or Middle Eastern. I was really booking it as he turned on a dime right at the edge of the building. I realized I was moving fast enough to catch him, but everyone else is really far behind. I also realize I'm moving so fast I won't be protected as I turn hard right at the corner of the building. If he stopped there, I'm toast. As I turned the corner, I saw a van sitting alone in the parking lot in front of me. It was running and brake lights flickered on then off. Park into drive. It began inching forward towards the exit. Homeslice is of course heading for the van, which for some reason sent this whole new level of fear into me. This is it. This is really happening, and I'm gonna get fucking murdered tonight. But I can't stop. Something keeps me moving forward. I guess I'd come this far, dealt with this crazy bullshit for almost a full year now, completely unable to do anything other than try to ignore it. I'm not exactly going places academically at this point, and my life doesn't quite have all that much purpose to it yet. If I'm going to get schwacked, I will at least know, and this crap will at least be over. Plus, I still have a chance to catch this madman before he gets away. If I could get close enough to dive tackle, I'd still be on my own to deal with the creepster, his driver, and now I realize there's a third one that was manning the sliding side door. Awesome. I don't care how badass you think you are when you're a 19-year-old jock. Your chances of taking down 3 grown men that are probably violent criminals and prepared to victimize me are about 1 in not gonna fucking happen, buddy. My turn was wide and slow due to being full-on sprinting, and I lost ground. I'm probably 20 yards from the lot when he does a flying leap into the side of the van, and there couldn't have been any rows or seats for a leap like that. Creepster number 3 slammed the sliding door shut as the van peeled out of the parking lot, banged a right, and was gone in an instant. The relief of not being kidnapped and bound and gagged in that van with 3 psychos who most likely had some pretty horrific plans for me was now just as strong as the dread of the fact that this is still not over with. I was speechless, and so was my platoon as they caught up to me a minute later. A few of them caught up enough to witness the parking lot scene, but no one was talking. Testosterone had now been replaced with genuine and earnest concern. They all just stood there with me, catching their breath and making sure I was okay. One guy asked if I got a plate number, and I didn't. There wasn't enough light. We finally started walking back, and I'm reliving the scene as we retraced our steps. As we got closer to the original meeting spot, I saw something that scared me more than anything else in the entire equation up to this point. On the opposite side of the pillar where Creepy McCreeperson was crouching, there was a video camera sitting on a stand pointed right at the spot I would have been standing at when I should have not been able to notice him. It was still recording. I was stalked by a jilted junkie hookup by KTB. This happened literally a month ago, back in February, when my boyfriend and I had decided to try out an open relationship for a little while, for various reasons. We live separately in one of the larger cities in the north of Middle America, and there's a decently sized population of college students like me to keep the gay community fresh, so I was doing pretty well for myself. One night, I was bored and scrolling through Grindr looking for an easy hookup when I got a message from a guy who was barely 800 feet away. He wasn't terrible looking, and I was a little desperate, so I agreed to go to his place. He lived quite literally down the street from me. I could see his building from my window. So I walked over, and he let me up into his apartment. We made small talk, and I mentioned where I lived. Hell, I even pointed out my window from one of the windows in the stairwell. From the first, I thought there was something off about the guy. Not necessarily bad, just different. An odd twitch in his hands when he gripped the banister. The vacancy of his eyes when he smiled. I'm not so cliché to say that he felt evil or anything like that, but I wasn't exactly surprised that, after we got to his apartment, the first thing he did was to tell his very pretty and friendly cat to say hello, and the second thing he did was walk over to the kitchen counter, grab a needle, and shoot up. I hadn't even closed the door behind me. I stood there staring, and he turned around, dropped the needle on the counter, and went, "Oh, shit, man, should have asked. You cool with that?" I am not a good Christian boy. I've broken into a church while tripping on LSD. I've had sex on a headstone back in high school, but I have my standards. So I shook my head mutely, pulled my hat back on, and opened the door to leave. The guy rushed over and put a hand on my shoulder. "Yo, I'm sorry. You don't gotta go. We don't gotta fuck. Do you want to watch Transformers 3 with me or something?" "Nope," I said bluntly, hustling away down the stairs. I bundled up my scarf against the early February chill and hurried back down the street to my apartment. He followed me downstairs, barefoot, in pajama pants and a t-shirt, until I stepped outside into the whipping winds. I turned back briefly to look after a moment, and he was still standing there in the doorway, watching me. I didn't have any premonitions of doom or weirdness. I grew up in Missouri. Junkies barely register as odd to me by this point. So I just went home and went to bed. Now, you might have guessed it, but I'd never seen this dude around the neighborhood before. Truthfully, I hadn't seen most of my neighbors because my neighborhood is an odd mixture of white-collar suburbia, college housing, and low-income housing like my paramour's building. All of that's on one street. So it didn't really register when I started seeing him more. I would leave for work in the afternoon, and he'd be on the other avenue across from my building, just strolling along. Or he'd cut across my building's parking lot like all the kids in the neighborhood did. A couple of times I saw him walking across the campus mall. My apartment building is directly adjacent to my campus, but he'd always swerve to avoid me. Once or twice I'd notice him in the grocery store I worked at as a barista, but it's the only one within walking distance, and he mentioned he didn't have a car. This went on for the entire month of February, and eventually I started noticing. He'd always be walking down the street opposite of my building when I left from my work at my usual time, and he was only ever at the store when I was working. He never approached the coffee stand within the store where I worked, but he always looked at me. A couple of times I noticed him enter, look at me, pretend to shop, and then leave without buying anything. And I was starting to feel creeped out, but he hadn't done anything yet to make me feel particularly unsafe. One day late in the month, I worked an early shift. When I got off, I felt a little more crazy from lack of sleep, and I reached my place about 20 minutes before I usually leave for work. On the corner of the sidewalk opposite me was this guy. He was checking his watch over and over and looking up. I did a bit of brilliant deductive analysis and followed his gaze up to my living room window. Then I looked back down at him. He looked right at me. There was a moment of tension as we stared each other in the eyes. Like I said, this dude didn't give off any evil or dark vibes. I mean, I've met people that do. But no, what I saw in this guy's eyes and his face was much more human and much scarier. Desperation, loneliness, pain, and anger. He hurried after me. I'm 6'3" and a former sprinter, whereas he was a 5'8" junkie wearing flip-flops on ice. I made it to the first set of doors to my apartment, scanned myself in through the second, and locked them behind me. He walked through the unlocked first set, tried to open the second, tried pushing the handicap button to open them, and then gave up. "Look, man, I'm sorry," he shouted, laying a hand on the glass of the door. "Can we talk about it?" I shook my head. "Absolutely not, man. Leave me alone." Then I whirled on my heel and stomped over to the elevator. When I turned back, he was gone out into the snow. I didn't see him for a couple of weeks afterward, which is nice because my boyfriend likes to walk down the street past the dude's apartment when he stays over and needs to go smoke. One night, my boyfriend was over at my place. He'd just gone out to smoke before we went to bed, and he mentioned that he wanted me to come with him the next time he went out. "Why?" I asked, pulling him in close to me while he shivered. "It's dark and cold, and I get paranoid out there sometimes," he mumbled into my chest. "There's this creepy dude that sometimes stands on the corner across the way, and he's just staring at the building. One time he asked me for a cig, and I told him I didn't have one when I literally had one in my hand." He laughed then, kissed my chin, and then passed out. I lay there awake, troubled. When I was sure my boyfriend was deeply asleep, meaning after about 5 minutes had passed, I extricated myself and went to the window. It was a cold, clear night, and I could see across the street, under the orange glow of the streetlight, there was the guy. I couldn't make him out clearly, but when he saw me, he waved. I flicked him off and closed the blinds. I didn't feel like I should have to tell my boyfriend because he was either going to immediately go to the police, which I hate doing, or he'd try and defend me. And while I love him with my entire heart, I didn't want to fight. I didn't want to watch a fight between a junkie stalker and my underweight nicotine-addicted boyfriend. So I kept it to myself, and I still haven't told him. But I did start accompanying him when he went out to smoke. That guy was usually outside. Sometimes he'd follow us for a bit before ducking down a side street, and sometimes he'd watch from a distance, and sometimes he'd be up in his apartment. My boyfriend never noticed. I kept my composure, and nothing happened. One night, though, we went out so my boyfriend could smoke like normal. When we reached the end of the street and turned around, the stalker was behind us, maybe 50 feet back. I turned my head to check, and there he was. He waved at me again, and something told me I had to get back inside. "Hey, babe," I said quietly to my boyfriend. "Let's get back inside, yeah? I'm cold." "Aw, baby," he said, kissing me on the cheek. "Okay, I'm almost done anyway." We walked back to the apartment building, and without turning, I knew that the stalker was behind us the entire time. I kept my hand intertwined with my boyfriend's, and he kept up the casual conversation we'd been having about how I hate geese. When we got back up to my apartment and he got changed for bed while I was grabbing some water. I've never lived in an apartment before, and I didn't know if it's odd or not, but this building has a weird telephone in each unit that rings when someone wants to be let in. Ours never rings unless it's Uber Eats. So my boyfriend was surprised when it started ringing late at night, when neither of us had ordered anything. Probably just some asshole playing a prank, I said, unhooking the phone from the wall and putting it in the kitchen cabinet. He accepted that without a struggle, and we laid down in bed. When he was soundly out, I got up, got dressed, grabbed a couple of things, and headed downstairs in my thick winter coat. Sure enough, Fanboy was out there in the parking lot. He waved at me and jogged over, smiling broadly. "Hey, man." "What do you want?" I said flatly. "Look, man, I feel like we ended things awkwardly last time. I just wanted to talk to you," he said. "So you stalked me?" "What?" He started to look angrier, his brows furrowing. "Nah, man, I didn't stalk you. I just wanted to know when I could talk to you, but you always avoid me. Now you're walking around out here with that skinny little bitch boy trying to rub it in my face, and I don't fucking appreciate that." "Look, man," he said, smiling again, stepping closer. "You want to go talk about this back at my place? Ditch the white boy and come hang out with me tonight. Please, I won't shoot up or anything this time." He took another step closer to me. I saw in his right hand a dully gleaming piece of metal, a folded-up switchblade. He smiled at me, and I stepped back, shaking my head, and his smile drained away into a deep scowl. "Bitch, I'm done asking. You're going to come over to my place now and finish what we started," he growled. He unfolded the knife and pointed it at me. Like I said, this dude was 5'8" tops and skinny. Like I said, I'm 6'3", 200 pounds, and regularly lift weights. Also, I had a 12-inch kitchen knife which I had drawn from my coat pocket and leveled at his throat. He looked at my knife and then back at his and smiled again. "All right, bro, I was just playing. We don't gotta, we can just talk right here, bro. I don't leave me and my boyfriend alone," I said very quietly. "I'll cut your face off and eat it." "What the fuck?" he said. "I spent 8 years in juvie for stabbing a kid in middle school." I lied. He backed up, putting the knife back in his pocket, and I took a step closer, holding my knife level. He backed away quickly, almost falling on the ice, until he was fully sprinting back to his place, and I was chasing him down with my knife, until he crossed the street and I stopped. Slid the knife back in my pocket, and watched him run back to his building. Then I went back up to my bedroom, told my boyfriend I just had to go to pee, and then fell asleep. So, nameless, horny junkie, let's not meet again, or I will eat your face. Cyber Stalker Found Me by 45 Minutes of Roadhead. 6 years ago, I was a new mom, learning to balance my job, family, and health. My social life primarily existed on the internet at this time, and Facebook and Instagram were the main ways I kept in contact with others. I received a friend request from Steven, an old friend from high school. I accepted, and everything was normal for a while. After a couple of months, Steven sent a DM asking how I was. The conversation was fine, but it didn't take too long for me to realize that this wasn't the Steven I knew. They had the same first and common last name. His profile picture was not a picture of himself, so I never realized that this was a different person. Either way, we had several mutual friends, and he didn't do anything especially creepy, so I left him on my friends list. He would occasionally message and chat, and he seemed just like someone that was a bit socially awkward but harmless. I would respond, but kept the conversations brief. One day, I got a text from him, which surprised me because I never gave him my number. I asked how he got my number, and he said from my website, which was fair. I'm an artist and had an email and phone contact info on my art site. He began texting several times a day, and I would give short responses followed with something like, "At work, TTYL," or "Dinner with the fam, have a good evening." He started talking about his new boyfriend, saying that he was one of the few gay conservatives and things were going well. I told him I was glad he had a partner that aligned with him and wished him well.
He then began talking a lot about conservative politics and was aggressive about it. And I told him I was liberal, so it was probably best we didn't have these conversations. His messages began turning sexual, where he would ask if I wanted to hear about the sex parties he and his boyfriend threw. I told him no. I didn't really know him, and it was inappropriate. One day, I was busy with work and returned to my phone to see dozens of messages from him, angry that I wasn't responding, and he went on and on sharing very graphic sexual stories. I responded and told him I had been polite to him because he seemed like he didn't have many friends, but this was too much, and I was blocking him. I told him that I didn't believe he was gay and that he was just saying it in an attempt to make me think he was harmless. I proceeded to block him on social media, and I blocked his phone number. A couple of days later, I started getting lots of friend requests from accounts that I didn't have mutual friends with, and no friends. I knew they were probably fake pages that he was creating. I would just block them and move on. Then I began getting phone calls and texts from fake phone numbers. Same thing. I would block them and move on. I messaged our mutuals to ask what they knew about him, and none of them knew him. He had just requested them, and they had accepted. He began sending requests to my friends, family, and any other woman in my dance troupe. I let everyone know that they needed to block him. For months, not a day passed that I did not get a weird call or friend request or DM. It would range from a normal, "How are you?" to vague threats of, "I could make you talk to me if I really wanted to." He lived several hours away, so I wasn't particularly concerned. Things got quieter until one evening my notifications started going off like crazy and my phone was ringing with unknown numbers. It was on my art page. Probably 15 different accounts had posted porn on my page or things like "OP is a whore" or "OP is a thief." I knew it was him because he also accidentally posted from his real account. And I didn't realize that I never blocked him from that page. He also sent a message to my art page saying sorry for that and he missed his friend and was just trying to get my attention. I didn't respond, blocked him, and called the police, since stalking and harassment laws are awful. Even though stalking and harassment laws are awful, they didn't do anything. Later that night, I woke up around 2 a.m. For no reason other than I was just having trouble sleeping, and I was up for a while playing on my phone, when I started hearing a strange sound coming from the living room. It was back and forth between quiet cracking and scratching. At the time, we lived in a large ranch house, and the living room was at the other end of a long hall. I got up, thinking that my cats were into something or maybe after a mouse. I flipped on the living room light, and the sound stopped. I scanned around looking for my cats when I noticed an open window. Our windows were large, from floor to ceiling, and opened by pulling them down from the top. The top of the windowsill had pry marks, and the lock was broken. Thankfully, this house was old, and the windows did not open easily, and he had only been able to open it by about 8 inches. I woke up my husband, got my son out of his room, and called the police. I knew it was Stephen. It was too big of a coincidence that he blew up that day, and then someone tried to break into my house in the middle of the night. We couldn't prove it was him. There was no evidence other than what had happened the day that pointed to him. The police spoke to him, and I believe that it scared him enough to leave me alone. I was obviously horrified at the time and began looking up anything I could to find out about him. I wound up finding his YouTube channel, which solidified my fears even more. He posted Rush Limbaugh-style rants and would get angrier and angrier until he was red-faced and nearly spitting. He frequently talked about violence and would show off his gun collection. This led me to finding his real last name. I Googled his name and found that he had been arrested 2 years prior for holding a woman against her will in a hotel and attempting to assault her. Thankfully, she was able to escape only with a bloody lip. We moved not long after. I wanted neighbors and off of the farm. I removed my phone number from my site, and I locked down all of my social media. I still sleep with a baby monitor in my son's room because I'm so scared of someone coming in at night. His YouTube channel was shut down after a bit, and I haven't heard from him since. So, Stephen, I hope you wound up in jail, and let's not meet.
Hey gang, thanks for listening to this episode. If you have a true scary story of any nature you'd like me to narrate, email it to UncleJoshTrueScaryStories@gmail.com. I read them all. If you're catching this on YouTube and you like what you heard and saw, why not give it a thumbs up? If you're not subscribed, why not become a subscriber? And leave me a comment. I'd love to know what you thought of the stories. If you'd like to take your support of what I'm doing a step further, find a link to my Patreon page in the description and get yourself some Uncle Josh or Campfire Crew merchandise. A link to my TeePublic storefront is down in that description too. Everyone, be excellent to each other. And until next time, be wary of things that go bump in the night. It could be anything. A ghost, a monster, or the guy next door.